These 10 movies lost Hollywood the most money in 2024. Sure, some of them kind of made up for it on streaming, like Madame Web becoming a surprising Netflix hit, although I'm sure most of us were just hate-watching it. But that doesn't change the fact that the budgets became just ridiculous, and maybe after this string of box office bombs, Hollywood will stop throwing money at stuff. Somehow, Joker 2 didn't snag the title of 2024's biggest flop, not even close when it comes to pure financial losses. That's almost impressive when you consider how far it fell from its predecessor's heights. The original Joker was a runaway hit, scooping up multiple Oscars and earning over $1 billion on a modest $55 to $70 million budget. Its sequel, not so much. Joker 2 picks up 2 years after Arthur Fleck's Chaos, diving into the madness that unfolds when he meets Harleen Quinzel just before his trial. But instead of continuing with the gritty psychological edge fans adored, the sequel made a bold, and let's be honest, baffling choice to go full musical. That tonal shift didn't sit well with everyone, although Tarantino still loved it for some reason. Sony's Spider-Man universe hasn't exactly been crushing it, and Madame Web didn't do much to turn things around. Released in early 2024, the movie stars Dakota Johnson as Cassie Webb in an action-packed origin story about her protecting 3 young women from a mysterious evil. It made $100.5 million at the box office, but when your budget is basically the same, that's not exactly a win. And the reviews? Brutal. Critics called it one of the worst films of the year, and even one of the worst superhero movies ever, at least until Craven came out. Kevin Costner knows his way around a Western, but his latest project didn't quite hit the mark. In mid-2024, he released Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1. The first in a planned series he's co-writing, directing, and starring in. The film focuses on a group of characters trying to survive in the Midwest during the Civil War, setting the stage for what's supposed to be a full-blown franchise. The problem? It's off to a shaky start. Made on a $50 million budget, the movie only brought in $38.2 million at the box office. That's not a great sign for the rest of the series. Part of the issue might be its daunting runtime, over 3 hours long. For an intro to a 4-part saga, that's a lot to ask from audiences, and it seems like many just weren't ready to commit. Studios love remaking popular films. It's usually a safe bet for making a solid profit. But the 2024 remake of The Crow showed that this strategy doesn't always work. Compared to other modern reboots, even in the horror genre, The Crow massively underperformed. It earned just $24 million at the box office, less than half of its $50 million budget. On top of that, the reviews were overwhelmingly negative, cementing it as a failure on all fronts. Compare it to Nosferatu, 2025's first surprising horror hit. Robert Eggers' gem has crossed $100 million at the global box office already. Guy Ritchie has had plenty of hits over the years, but his latest movie didn't make the cut. Released in April, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare dives into a fictionalized, action-packed World War II mission. While critics didn't completely trash the film, the bit of praise it got wasn't enough to save it. With a $60 million budget, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare only managed to pull in $27.3 million at the box office. Not exactly what the team was hoping for. Ritchie's probably crossing his fingers for better luck with his next project. With classics like Back to the Future and Forrest Gump under his belt, Robert Zemeckis has delivered some major hits over the years. Unfortunately, his latest film, Here, didn't quite measure up. The movie has a unique concept, showing how one patch of land changes over thousands of years, highlighting the events that unfolded there. But despite the intriguing premise and Tom Hanks' Robin Wright reunion, it struggled at the box office. Made for around $50 million, Here only managed to bring in $13.4 million, barely a third of its budget. Critics weren't too kind either, with reviews landing all over the place. When you add it all up, here goes down as one of the least successful films of 2024, and definitely a low point in Zemeckis' otherwise impressive career. Greg Berlanti's Fly Me to the Moon had everything going for it. Classic rom-com charm, a clever 1960s twist, and a star-studded cast led by Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum. The plot follows a NASA launch director and a marketing expert teaming up to fake a moon landing in case the real one fails. On paper, it had blockbuster potential. In reality, it was a total flop. Despite a 9-figure budget, the film barely made back half its cost. Originally intended as a straight-to-streaming release, its theatrical rollout was a mess. Poor marketing left audiences clueless about what the movie was even about. Not even Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum could salvage this one. Following the massive success of HBO's The Last of Us, it was only a matter of time before other video game adaptations followed. Unfortunately, not every attempt lived up to the hype. Case in point, Eli Roth's Borderlands. Backed by a star-studded cast, the film adapted the fan-favorite sci-fi series, following a ragtag crew on a mission to find a missing person. Despite its flashy source material and high-profile names, Borderlands bombed. With a bloated budget and box office earnings of just $33 million, it became one of the biggest failures of the year. Critics shredded the movie, with most reviews agreeing it had almost nothing redeemable to offer. It's proof that simply slapping a beloved title on the big screen isn't enough, especially when the execution falls flat. With a flashy concept and an all-star cast, Argylle had all the makings of a hit, or so the filmmakers thought. Directed by Matthew Vaughn, this action comedy spins a wild tale about an author whose latest novel accidentally mirrors real-world events. Unfortunately, what sounded intriguing on paper turned into a chaotic mess on screen. Audiences found the plot too convoluted and the humor painfully corny, which left theaters depressingly empty. Universal Pictures and Apple Original Films were left with a massive financial failure when the movie crawled to a measly $96.2 million at the box office, not even half of what it cost to make. Love it or hate it, Megalopolis certainly got people talking. Decades after redefining cinema with The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola returned with this long-gestating sci-fi epic. Opinions were all over the map, ranging from disaster to masterpiece. But one thing was indisputable: Megalopolis bombed. Coppola, who reportedly financed the $120 to $136 million budget himself, saw a crushing return of just 10% at the box office. For a passion project decades in the making, it's hard to imagine the sting of such dismal numbers.